Hello everybody, welcome back to Art 2 class. Last time we met, you were supposed to practice a whole bunch of trees, way more than I have finished here. Hopefully you practiced that, and I would have loved for you to send that to me in a message so I can see how well you did. So now that we've practiced, we are going to be ready to add our trees to our painting. So we're going to pull our painting back out. We're still using our same palette. There's no need to waste this paint. We just put our cover on it each day and we're fine. So now we are going to have our trees growing from our land masses here. So we've got our mountains in the back, and then we've got a land mass here and a land mass here. And so if we're thinking about perspective techniques, as things go back into space, they get smaller. So I think we'll start maybe with a couple trees over here. So we're going to use our littlest brush, and if you remember yesterday what we did, just take a little spot of water, a little spot of black, mix it together so you can get a nice smooth line. And then I think I'm going to add 2 trees to this little land mass here. So here's my 2 trees. One is a little crooked, that's okay, trees grow crooked. So I'm going to have those 2 little trees there. And then I want some trees over here too. I want some big trees over here. So I'm going to get my little spot of water on my black, and I'm going to have, remember, these trees are in the foreground, these trees are in the middle ground, the mountain sky is back there in the background. So as things go back into space, they're going to get smaller, higher on the page. So we are going to have this tree be pretty big. This is going to be a tree in the foreground. So I've got this little black spot of paint here that I had, and I wasn't worried about it because I knew I was going to put a tree over it. So I'm going to have this tree trunk start way up here, and then it's going to come way down here to this land mass. That's a big tree, isn't it? So this is our tree trunk. So it started way up here in the sky. Our tree isn't in the sky because the bottom of it is down here. So our tree is still in the foreground. And I don't just want one tree because, as Bob Ross would say, he needs a friend. So we're going to have another tree, and he's going to start up here, and then that tree is going to come all the way down here. And now we've got 2 trees in our foreground area. And you know, there might be a little tree down here starting to grow, so I'm going to put a little one right here. I think it's good to have like an odd number on one side, and if I have an even number on one side, I think it helps the composition out. So now we've got our tree trunks. Okay, so that was just one line for the tree trunks. So now we're going to get our larger brush, our larger flat brush. Make sure it's all dried off. Make sure it's clean and dried off. And remember, we're going to dip it into the black paint. I think I'm going to need a little bit more black paint, so I'll put a little bit more of my paint here. And I'm going to start with these trees back here, because always good to start from the background to the foreground. And I'm going to start with these trees, just like we did in our practices. So here he comes. Down, we're overlapping all the things that we have going on behind it. That's why we wanted to draw and paint those first. Then I'm going to work on this tree. And then I'm going to work on these trees over here. Now you don't want these to be super thick. You want to still be able to see glimpses of the background behind the trees, like through the branches. So it's good to have them be a little airy in there. So you don't want them to be super thick. And I'm going to do the same thing with this. By the way, this is acrylic paint that we're using. When we watch Bob Ross videos, he's going to be using oil paints. I like to use the acrylic paints for the class because the oil paints take a long time to dry. And since we have to take our work back and forth from home to school, I find it easier to use the acrylic. The acrylic paints will dry in a couple minutes. So, you know, like I've got 5 trees that I'm working on here. By the time I'm finished the 5th tree, my first tree that I started working on will be dry enough to add the next layer on. So, just gonna continue this little tree. And then I'm going to work on this little tiny one that I have here. Alright, so that was our first layer. That's the black. Alright, so now remember what we did. We took the black and we added a little bit of blue. So get my mixing blue in my black. And I'm going to make a sort of dark blue. Sort of a dark gray blue. And then I'm going to go back and add the next layer to my trees. So we're building up the values. So you can do this too. As you're doing this, you don't want your trees to get thicker and thicker. You're just tipping what you've already painted. So you're just tipping that with the paint. Remember, we're doing this with the dark blue. It's a big tree, so I'm running out of paint, so I just gotta mix some more. You know, as your trees are really close together, they're going to start getting sort of touching and mush together a little bit. That's okay, as long as you're keeping your paint. You know, you don't want it all sort of mushed together so you can't tell what's happening. So I'll add a little bit of value to this. Alright, so now that was our dark blue. So hopefully you remember what's next. What's next? And that is our regular blue. So I'm taking my brush, cleaning it off. And then I'm going to tip it in my blue. And then I'm going to tip each of these branches with the blue. So I'm showing my values. That's why I like to use this flat brush though, because I really can get in there and tip these trees. Well, those look really nice there. I like those. So let's see if we can do that over here. This is just the regular Mediterranean blue that we have. No mixing, so you can just get it right out of your clean paint even. Do some more in this tree. All right. So I think I wanted that to dry just a little bit to make sure all that paint's dry before we come back and do our last little touch-ups. So I will see you next time.